Imagine you finally get the raise you've been waiting for. Not a small one, a real one. The kind that changes your bank balance in a way you can actually see. And for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, life feels genuinely better. Then something strange happens. The number that once felt like enough starts to feel ordinary. And quietly, almost without you noticing, a new number takes its place. Just a little more, you think. Just a little more, and then I'll be okay. This isn't a personal failure. It isn't weak willpower or shallow values. It's a mechanism, one so deeply wired into human psychology that researchers have given it a name, the hedonic treadmill. And once you understand how it works, you'll never think about money or happiness quite the same way again. In the late 1970s, a psychologist named Philip Brickman tracked down lottery winners, people who had won between $50,000 and $1 million, and asked them a simple question: how happy are you? The answer should have been obvious, but it wasn't. Within a year of their windfall, lottery winners reported almost exactly the same levels of happiness as people who had won nothing. The money had come. The joy had not stayed. But here's the part of that study that almost nobody talks about. Brickman also asked the lottery winners how much pleasure they got from ordinary, everyday activities: eating a meal, watching television, talking with a friend. And compared to people who hadn't won, the winners rated those small pleasures significantly lower. The lottery hadn't just failed to make them happier, it had quietly made the texture of normal life feel worse. The treadmill doesn't just reset your happiness back to baseline, it raises the floor of what you need just to feel okay. What used to be enough, a decent dinner, a comfortable evening, a reliable car, stops registering as good. It becomes invisible. And the only thing that stands out is what you don't yet have. Now you might be thinking, surely this doesn't apply to me. I'm not chasing lottery winnings. I just want a stable, comfortable life. But the treadmill doesn't care about scale. It operates just as powerfully on the person moving from $30,000 to $60,000 a year as it does on the person moving from $1 million to $10 million. There's a landmark finding in economics called the Easterlin Paradox, named after economist Richard Easterlin, and it reveals something deeply uncomfortable about the world we've built. Between 1974 and 2004, the average American's real income roughly doubled, and yet average happiness didn't move. A whole nation getting richer together, going nowhere on the happiness scale. That's not a blip. That's a structural problem, and it points to something Easterlin had identified decades earlier. When everyone's income rises at the same time, no one feels richer. Because happiness isn't just about what you have, it's about what you have compared to the people around you, and that comparison is relentless, invisible, and almost impossible to escape. Would you rather earn $60,000 a year while everyone around you earns $40,000, or earn $80,000 while everyone around you earns $100,000? Most people, when they're honest, admit the first option would feel better. Research confirms this isn't irrational. Studies show that your income rank within your social group predicts your life satisfaction better than the actual number on your paycheck. It's not the salary. It's the standing. This is relative income, the idea that we measure our well-being not against some fixed standard, but against whoever happens to be standing next to us. Even if you earn more this year, if the people around you earned more too, you're still in exactly the same place. So the treadmill has two engines: adaptation and comparison. Adaptation means that what once thrilled you eventually becomes invisible. Comparison means that no matter how far you run, someone ahead of you is always setting a new target. Together, they create a system where more almost never feels like enough, not because you're ungrateful, but because your reference points are constantly shifting. And society doesn't just tolerate this, it actively fuels it. In 1967, roughly 42% of American college freshmen said that being very well off financially was an important life goal. By the early 2000s, that number had climbed to 82%, nearly double in a single generation. Psychologist Tim Kasser spent years studying what actually happens to people who organize their lives around financial success. What he found wasn't just that money doesn't buy happiness, it's that prioritizing wealth above other values tends to erode the things that do create it: more anxiety, weaker friendships, a persistent sense that something is missing. The cruel irony is that the pursuit of more can actively displace the things that make us feel alive, not because ambition is bad, but because the hedonic treadmill tricks us into treating happiness as a destination rather than a state. We keep running toward a finish line that keeps moving. So, what does the research actually say about money and happiness? The relationship is real. Having more money up to a point does reduce suffering. It removes the grinding stress of not being able to pay rent, of choosing between food and medicine. That kind of relief is genuine and it matters deeply. But above a certain threshold, somewhere around $100,000 a year in the United States, accounting for cost of living, the returns become much harder to see. A landmark collaboration between psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Kahneman found something nuanced. For people who are already unhappy, money stops improving their emotional life above that level. If you're miserable earning $50,000, earning $200,000 will help, but probably not as much as you think. And if you're reasonably content, doubling your salary is far less likely to transform your daily emotional experience than you imagine. That gap between expectation and reality, that's the treadmill in action. There's a name for what happens to our sense of what's enough as we earn more: the aspiration income spiral. It works like this. As your income rises, your sense of what counts as sufficient rises with it, at almost exactly the same rate. Researcher Alois Stutzer documented this across thousands of people. The target never stops moving because it's attached to you. But here's what makes the treadmill genuinely insidious. It's not just about money. It reaches into how you experience Tuesday afternoon, how satisfying a meal feels, whether a quiet evening at home registers as rest or restlessness. Psychologists Killingsworth and Gilbert found that during nearly half of all waking hours, about 47%, the human mind is not actually present in whatever it's doing. It's elsewhere. And a wandering mind, the research shows, is consistently an unhappy one. So much of our mental time is spent on the next thing, the raise we haven't gotten yet, the house that would finally feel like enough. We are, as a species, remarkably skilled at living in the future, and remarkably bad at noticing that the future keeps arriving without delivering what we expected. So, what can actually be done? The first thing researchers point to is almost too simple to believe. How you spend matters more than how much you spend. Spending on experiences, a trip, a concert, a meal shared with people you love, tends to produce happiness that lasts. Spending on possessions fades, precisely because objects are easy to adapt to. A new car becomes your car within weeks, but a trip you took 3 years ago can still make you smile. The experience lives in memory, where it can't depreciate. The second shift is even more counterintuitive. Spending on other people, what researchers call pro-social spending, consistently produces more happiness than spending on yourself. This pattern has been documented across 136 countries, from Canada to Uganda. The act of giving, whether it's buying a friend lunch or donating to a cause you believe in, seems to tap something the treadmill can't reach. It produces a kind of satisfaction that doesn't adapt away. Third, time. In a study of more than 4,600 Americans, people who actively prioritize time over money, who chose flexible hours, shorter commutes, less demanding jobs, reported higher life satisfaction than those who optimized for income. Not because money doesn't matter, but because time is the canvas on which everything else is painted. And once it's gone, no salary can buy it back. Fourth, gratitude, which sounds like advice on a coffee mug until you look at what it actually does. Research by Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough found that people who kept a weekly journal listing things they were grateful for showed well-being scores around 25% higher than people who didn't. Gratitude, practiced deliberately, seems to slow the treadmill, not by changing your circumstances, but by changing what your attention treats as visible. It trains the mind to notice what's already there. This is the core insight that the treadmill keeps hidden from us. We don't actually suffer from not having enough. We suffer from not noticing what we have. The mind that is always reaching forward is also, by definition, always looking past the present. The present, this particular Tuesday, this particular meal, this particular conversation, is the only place happiness can actually live, and the treadmill keeps us perpetually one step ahead of it. None of this means ambition is wrong. None of it means you shouldn't pursue a better income, a more secure future, a life with more breathing room. But there is a crucial difference between building towards something specific and running because you can't stand to stop. One is directed, the other is the treadmill. The question worth asking, the one this research quietly forces us toward, isn't how much more do I need? The question is, what would I stop running for? What would have to be true for the life you already have to feel like the life you actually want? Most people have never seriously asked that question, and the treadmill keeps them too busy to. Remember that raise at the beginning of this story, the one that changed everything for a few weeks, then quietly stopped feeling like anything at all? Here's what nobody tells you about that moment. The brief window when it still felt new, when the number was still surprising before it became ordinary, that wasn't a preview of a better life you hadn't yet reached. That was happiness, fully available, slipping by while you were already planning the next step. The treadmill doesn't steal your joy. It just keeps you moving fast enough that you never stop to feel it. The deepest truth the research keeps returning to is this: the gap between what you want and what you have is not closed by earning more. It is closed by wanting more deliberately and noticing more often that enough is already here. That's not a consolation prize. That's the whole game.